Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Grum and this is going to be a tutorial for Godot on how to make Pong. So let's get right into it. Click create new project. I'm going to name this Pong. Let's name this Pong 2 because I already got Pong 1. We're going to use the forward plus renderer and we're going to have Git as our control. Let's go. All right, so we're loaded up into Godot. Let's start here with going over how I have my Godot set up so you can follow along. I have all my docs over on the left-hand side here. You can change that by clicking the three dots here and setting up your dock position with these squares. I think when you first start Godot, your dock positions are going to be different than mine. I think history and file system start over here on the side. I also think the inspector starts over on the side here. But I like it set up like this because it's easier to drag and drop things into the inspector and everything's contained on one side. I just think it looks nicer. And I suggest that you do the same just so you can follow along a little easier. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I would recommend it. Next, let's go into some editor settings. You go to editor and editor settings. Here we're going to do our folding options. So if you type fold here and click on the inspector, I would recommend that you turn disable folding on. This will make sure that whenever you have a node selected in your inspector, that all of the different tabs will be unfolded automatically. It makes it easier to just navigate. Also, if you go to, excuse me, manager settings, manage editor features here, sorry. We're going to set this up for 2D only. So if you're first starting out, your setup probably looks something like this. And for our purposes, we're only going to be using 2D. So I would recommend turning off all of the 3D stuff. So I recommend turning off the 3D editor, the asset library, and even the game view. We don't need that. If you scroll down here to 3D nodes, I already have it turned off, but you can turn this off as well, so we're not going to see any 3D nodes. And that'll just help us find the nodes that we're looking for easier and faster. So that's looking good. For this, we're going to be using GitHub Desktop for our repository. So if you don't have GitHub Desktop, I would highly recommend it. If you use some other type of version control like Git in the console or something, that's fine, but this is really beginner friendly and it's really simple and easy to use. So I'll just show you how to set that up really quick. If we go to File, New Repository, we can create a new repository here. And you want to make sure that you name this the exact same name as the folder that your Godot project saved to. So make sure you go to your Godot game folder and make sure that it's named exactly the same as your repository here. So this link right here should go to your folder for Godot, for your Godot project. And mine had a dash in it, so I'm going to make that match up with that so it knows what folder to look at, and just click create repository. And we can publish the repository. And if this is your first time using GitHub, desktop, you're probably going to need to go to options and log into your github.com account and set that up, and then this will push nicely. So now we have our repository set up. Let's go ahead and get right into it. I used a sprite to make the sprites for this, and I included a link to a Dropbox for the sprites and the audio files in the description below. So if you want to go ahead and download those, and you can use those assets as you see fit. So let's go ahead and create a new folder here. And we're going to name this assets. And under that folder, we're going to create another folder. We're going to name this sprites. And we're going to create another folder on here and name this audio. And under the audio folder, we're going to create another folder and call this SFX. Just nice to stay nice and organized right from the start of a project. So let me go and find out where I have those assets saved, and we'll pull them right in. So I've got my sprite assets here. I'm just going to drag them and drop them into sprites. So now we have our ball, our line, and our paddle. And I'm going to take the audio files and just drag and drop them right here into our sound effects file. So now we have all of our sound effects we're going to be using and all the sprites we're going to be using. All right, let's start with project settings. So come up here to project settings. I'm going to change a few things in here. Let's go to window, and for our viewport resolution, we're going to do 640 by 360. This is a really common and nice to work with resolution for pixel art games. Let's come down here to the window width override. And if you're on 1920 by 1080 monitor, I would suggest you use 1280 by 720 here, so the game doesn't take up your whole screen. You can still see your console debug and stuff like that. But I'm on a little larger monitor, so I'm going to use 1920 by 1080 here. If we come down to stretch mode here, we're going to want to use canvas items, and that's going to stretch our sprites and keep them scaled properly across the entire screen. Also, let's come down here to rendering textures, and we're going to change the default texture filter to nearest. And this is necessary for pixel art games as well, so they don't have a filter on them and they don't look blurry. So that should be nice. Just a quick note here, I'm going to assume that you have a little bit of experience with Godot and GDScript in general. I'm not going to go over every little thing about Godot and the scripting process, but if you have worked with Godot before, you should be able to follow along quite nicely. So let's make our first scene here. We're going to make it a 2D scene, and let's rename this to game. This is going to be our main scene. And let's go ahead and save that. Let's create a new folder here. Let's name it source, or SRC for short. And under that folder, let's have a game folder and save this first scene under source and game. Now we can go to our project settings one more time and go to the run tab, and under main scene, we can set that game scene to be the first scene that loads when we start our program. Now we have the game scene set up. Let's start with making the arena. So come over here and click this plus sign to add a new scene. This is also going to be a 2D scene, and we're going to name this Arena. And under Arena, we're going to have a color rect for the background. So let's add a color rect. And for the color, we're just going to make this pure black. And for the size, this is going to be 640 by 360. So this is going to take up the entirety of the game screen in the background. And we can go ahead and name this background. Next, let's make some static body 2Ds for the colliders on the top and bottom walls. Now, static body 2Ds are collision objects that can detect collisions, and static body 2D is a physics object that can't be moved by external forces, like it says here. So these are used for things in your game that will never move. So we have a static body 2D here. Let's rename that to top wall. And whenever you have a collision object, it's always going to require that you add a collision shape to it as a child. So let's add a collision shape 2D as a child of the top wall. And every collision shape 2D needs a shape under it. So here we're going to go to rectangle shape 2D. And this is our actual collider. So let's turn on snapping here, use grid snap, and let's configure the grid snap to 2x2. And stretch this over the top part of the game screen. So this actually isn't in the game itself, in the window, but it's right on the top edge. We're making it a little thicker so that if the ball is moving really fast, it won't just phase through it. If the collision shape was very small like this, the ball could be moving so fast that it moves through it on a single frame and it never actually detects a collision. So it's not going to hurt us if we make that a little thicker, and we won't have any tunneling issues. On the top wall here, let's go ahead and set up the collision layer and collision masks. So for the collision layer, let's click these three dots here and go to edit layer names. And for the first layer, we're going to name this world. So this is going to be the background world layer. And these static body 2Ds are going to be on layer 1, but they're not going to be actually looking for any collisions. We're not going to be having a script where or need them to have a mask. So a mask is basically what other collision objects this static body 2D is looking for. And the way we're going to set it up is we're going to have a ball, and the ball is going to have a collision mask of 1. So it's going to be looking for this collision shape, which is on layer 1. So we actually don't need a mask here. We can go ahead and duplicate that and name this bottom wall. And duplicate is Control D, by the way. If you click on top wall, Control D. And we can go ahead and move this bottom wall to the bottom of the arena here. And to do that, we can go to move mode by clicking this button here, or you can press W and you can switch between these different modes. This is rotate mode, and this is scale mode, and this is select mode. So you can move between those different modes by hitting Q, W, E, and R really quickly. So let's go hit Q and drag this to the bottom of our game screen. Make sure that it's lined up right at the bottom there. That's nice. And that's all we have to do for setting up the top and bottom walls in our scene here. Let's go ahead and add one more thing here. Let's add a sprite 2D, and we're going to name this the middle line. And this is going to be the halfway point of our arena. So let's take this line PNG and drag it up into the textures field of that sprite 2D. So now we have the sprite there. And we're going to position this in the center of our arena. So that's going to be 640 divided by 2. And then that's going to be 360 divided by 2. And so now that is perfectly in the middle of our screen. And that's all we need to do for the arena for now. So let's go ahead and save that. And name this arena. Name the folder arena and save that. So now we have an arena folder and a game folder down here with our scenes in it. Let's go back to game here and instantiate a child scene and add that arena into our game. So now our game scene, our main game scene, is holding that arena, and we can go up here and click play and see that everything is set up really nicely. It's already starting to look like a Pong game.